I'm in Max. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 24, Episode 9 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
I'm Stork.
I'm Jason.
We were just laughing right before you guys came on about how short the intro is, and it caught Stu in his pants, and he's fumbling for his mic.
I tried to open my beer, and I got one of these.
Oh, fail.
So
It's all broken and dropped.
I dropped it and dented the can, so now it won't open. I have to use a pencil or something to open
a lot
it
like
up.
us, just denting cans full of beer.
Right.
Here, you want me to tap it open?
Speak for
Yes, please.
yourself. My can is not dented.
Thank you.
I don't even like beer.
Exactly. Also relevant.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about Pyrrhic successes in resolution mechanics. Kurt writes in about face characters in D&D, and Ryan writes in to ask what effects APs are having on the tabletop RPG hobby.
I'm so excited about that question.
But first, if you'd like to email us, and we could use some emails, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. Social media. Mm-hmm. We have a forum, happyjacksforum.com.
Yes.
happyjacksforum.com.
It's been bumping lately, too. There's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, this
there.
new version's really good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the one we finally settled on.
Yes.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and MeWe. HappyJacksRPG, all one word. HappyJacksRPG, all one word. If you'd like to watch the show live, you can watch us at happyjacks.org/live, 7 p.m. Pacific time. On Fridays, we stream the show. And plus, of course, you can also go there for all of our many APs.
Yes. And if you want to find us, like Happy Jack's RPG on Twitch, on YouTube, all those things, it's the same thing everywhere.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So what?
And JackerCon.
Oh, JackerCon. I don't have the specifics for JackerCon.
So go to jackercon.com. You can sign up. JackerCon is our fan-run online convention. And it's coming back this year. We're very excited about it. It's happening at the end
June
of...
23rd.
Yes.
June 23rd to July 1st-ish.
Yes, and people are running games, and you can go up and sign up to run a game or sign up to playing games. People all over the world are running games, too, so if you're in a weird time zone, there's probably somebody running something in your time zone. So do the thing, and a bunch of us are going to be running games. I haven't signed up for mine yet, but I'm going to be running at least one game during that week.
Excellent.
So, and it's all online, so no travel time, and you have to bring your own beer.
Right.
Yes.
No mooching off someone else's beer.
I mean, if you can.
If you can.
I'm not sure.
Offered beer is not mooching.
No.
That's true.
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if it's left unattended, in a fridge, it's up for grabs. It's not,
Yeah.
It's like it's there.
If you didn't write your name on it.
Right, yeah.
Oh, we need to get
Roommate etiquette.
social media accounts that say Happy Jack's RPG, all one word. And figure out some way to redirect them.
Yes, that would be amazing.
I think that's too many letters.
But
Yeah.
someone's going to do it.
Yes.
Now they will, yeah.
I guess if you put a 1, you can. I'm going to do it.
I'm going to register that.
Oh, one word? Just number one?
The number 1, that might save characters. I think
Okay.
about things like this a lot, sorry.
I wanted to talk about Pyrrhic successes. A success with a complication, that kind of thing.
Yeah, or if you're like me and had to look up what Pyrrhic means, it means a victory won at a cost greater than is worth it to the person who won.
For those of you playing along at home, if you want to spell it and look it up on your own, it's PYRRHIC.
And I think it was a Carthaginian general? Was it
Yeah.
Carthaginian? Pyrrhus, right?
Yeah.
And he fought a battle. I don't remember the name of the battle, but he was quoted as saying something like, if I have many more victories like this, I'm going to lose the war.
Yeah.
Because he won the battle, but it was so costly to his army, he would have been better off just not fight it at all.
Yeah.
I love my friends. I'm just going to say that. My friends are cool and they're smart and know things. I like them.
I took a Roman history class in college, and that's where I heard the term.
And
I'm like,
Jason has a degree in literature.
That's true.
Yes.
Right.
And I went to the Googles.
So now, PBTA is probably one of the first, if not the first game that kind of had this sort of concept of your dice roll that isn't a success and is a failure is not necessarily a failure. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of dropped the book when I was reading 7th edition Call of Cthulhu, because in the sort of near the back of the book, in the GMing section, they give a lot of suggestions, because Call of Cthulhu uses percentile dice, and you get a lot of really swingy results.
Yeah, that feels like D20 does that as well. Where
Right.
You're like, oh, cool, I have a +8 to this. Okay, well, good luck. There's.
Right. Because and I almost dropped the book when they mentioned the fact that in some situations the GM may consider when there is a failure of a roll to go ahead and have them succeed, but it has some sort of unintended consequence or in some ways makes that success Pyrrhic. So I kind of wanted to discuss that, when you would apply that kind of thing, games that use it, how they use it, and sort of the differences between it.
Yeah. I had a system like this back when, running Shadowrun in the 90s, and it's you're trying to get a number of successes on six-siders. And so you back up your dump truck of dice and roll them all, and you're trying to get 8 successes, right? And if somebody came up with like 6 or 7 successes, the rules just say you lose. So what I should back up to, one of the things that I went bonkers with when I found Apocalypse World and PBTA games, I was like, oh, this is how I've been running games. It's so exciting to see someone write this down. So in Shadowrun, I came up with this system of like, fate or luck, and I said, yeah, guys, if you want to pay me a bad luck, I'll give you the extra success you need to, however much you're short, but I'm going to use that later, and I'm going to add dice to the bad guys based on the bad luck that you just paid me. And
that's a good
new
idea.
Star Trek game has a system that's almost exactly that, so I approve.
We can go out on a limb and say that you invented that concept.
Yeah, cool. 12-year-old Jason.
At 12 you came up with that?
Right. Well, probably like 14.
Oh, still.
That's
wow.
more impressive. If you got better between 12 and 14, that's very different.
Well, we were also, it was because we didn't fully understand all of the rule book. Like, if you go back and look at first edition Shadowrun rule book, it is...
hot mess.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess. I bought it and I read it and I didn't understand a word in it. It's a mess.
And so you kind of had to wing it and make up stuff that made sense. And so when somebody rolled 15 dice, when most people have 8 or 9, you think, oh yeah, that guy's going to crush it, and then still comes up 1 or 2 short.
Right.
You're like, there's probably, it seems like in a world with magic and whatever else, I'm like, but that was just my 14-year-old justification too. Like, no, in a world where storytelling is more important, let's get a cost in there. And in that way, it's not as good as like the sort of 7 to 9 partial or shitty success, because it was like banked away and they didn't necessarily see the narrative consequences and the stakes rise and like the stuff that some of the modern systems are doing. But there are just lots of ways to incorporate this, where even if your favorite system doesn't have something like this, like if you want to play D&D and the DC is a 15, maybe say, if you get from 10 to 14, that something is, like maybe you have some sort of percentage that's a third of the DC or something like that, where you got close and something happens, just because D&D, Fate is less so, but like the other percentile-based systems are swing so hard. Even if you have a 75%, that seems like somebody who'd be really good at something, but really it's just 3/4. Yeah. Like, let's roll a D4 if you have a 75%.
Yeah.
Right.
On a 1 you miss. Like,
we ran into that with Dead Rain a lot.
Yes.
When we were doing our zombie apocalypse game and in the Palladium system. And oh man, like, I'm gonna no, I didn't. We're gonna die. We're all gonna die.
Yeah. And here you're supposed to be these like epic, heroic, badass adventurers. Well, okay, maybe not.
Maybe not in that game.
But like Shadowrun, you're professional.
Yeah.
Elite criminals.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you should be out there kicking ass and taking names, and like maybe the corporations will get one over on you because they have so many resources and whatever. But like, you're up against like a hellhound and like one hellhound. You're gonna wipe the team. Like, oh, that's not good.
I kind of like the idea of banking that misfortune, though, because if you can use it right away, if you've got something that seems applicable right away, you could use it right then. But you can also kind of takes a little bit of pressure off the GM to come up with something right away that is going to fit that situation that isn't, lame.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, Star Trek does a good job with that. If you look
What's-
at their
how's the Star Trek
momentum and threat, and so you can earn momentum when you get more successes than you needed, and then if you come up short, no, not if you come up short. If you want more dice in your roll, you can spend momentum to get more dice. But if you don't have any momentum, you can pay. You can say, okay, GM, give yourself some threat because I need an extra die for this. And then when the GM has threat, they can spend it to get dice for themselves.
Okay. How I don't remember. It's been so long since I ran it. How did the FFG Star Wars? Because it had those double-sided tokens that was like light and dark, and
Yeah.
Oh,
the
yeah.
GM could flip them to light, which would give the players the option to use them later, and then the
Yeah.
players could flip them when they wanted to use them.
That was the one good thing in that system.
Yeah, we used
And
it
the artwork.
some.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I know. I'm gonna get flamed for this.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's okay.
we are.
There are parts of it I didn't like. Like, I thought a lot of the talent trees and stuff were super too complicated.
I hate skill trees.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I liked the concept of the dice, and I like how they made it in L5R.
See,
Their
I
L5R
didn't.
I really liked.
I did not.
I know.
That whole thing sort of bothered me, and then it breaks it down into these weird little minutiae. Even when you're rolling perception, if you don't succeed or whatever, suddenly you have to come up with something, or the GM has to come up with something that you may have noticed that isn't. I don't know. It just it seemed to complicate even the simplest of things.
Yeah.
I think I because I'd come from Edge of the Empire to the simplified version of L5R.
Yeah,
sure.
I think that seemed a little more natural to me. I think going the other way, you'd be like, whoa, because I think they made it much more elegant for the L5R system.
I need less breaking the immersion and bargaining with the GM and I'll trade you this for this if I can have this and this, and then that rule comes back. It really pulls me out of a game. It pulls me out of moments when everybody's trading rules back and forth and bargaining, and it's really, really meta. I get it because you need a way to exchange these mechanical benefits and disadvantages, but it really pulls me out. I mean, I had that problem with Fate where you never fully get sunk in because you're always looking at that surface set of rules.
I think you would eventually, if you played it
Everyone
enough.
tells
I
me
would
that.
think. I would think
But
that it
that's
would just become second
specifically
nature.
Fate, maybe. But I find that the rules never fully go away. Same thing with the L5R. Of course, we never fully grokked it, and it was in beta, and they were still tweaking it. But
Yeah, I think if they, I'm hoping that they streamlined the book. I kind of glanced at it, but I haven't really tried.
I haven't
through
read it, but I've heard it's still a hot mess.
Yeah, that's too bad. I mean, their strife thing. We've talked about how much we like that. I think I lost track of the original topic though. Are we still on topic?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, we
good.
are.
Yeah.
It's a fair success.
Fantastic.
And really, that L5R game really has a version of that in there with the strife that
Yeah.
is going on with you have to succeed with a fail or with a you succeed with a fail.
Right. A complication.
I think too. I mean, like, it was very much like PBTA in some aspects of it. Like, you succeed with a complication.
Yeah.
You get strife, but you could, if you choose to push it farther. So I think that's another thing that I kind of liked about it is it was another way of doing that was a little different. And
Right, because it's on the dice rolls, and even
Yeah.
you're banking strife as well, because you get too much of it, and it comes
Yeah.
out at some point.
Yeah.
So
as much of a hot mess as I think other parts of that book are, and I think a lot of it is the
The
layout.
strife mechanic was pretty cool.
Yeah, the strife mechanic was cool.
Well, they were messing with it during the beta too, because
Yeah.
they kind of changed how it worked
Yeah.
between the various versions of it.
Yeah, and I think that they just kind of streamlined the book a little bit and kind of kept some of the concepts from the dice mechanic and definitely the strife thing. I think we all would have been a little bit more friendly on it.
how can you sort of house rule this? You think with like D&D, let's say, or even Pathfinder? Is there a way?
Well, let me tell the way Call of Cthulhu does it is it's and this is not in the main part of the rule book. It's in the GMing section. It's like, if someone made a roll and you don't have a consequence, or I don't remember exactly how they phrase it, but you don't have if it's more interesting for it to have succeeded, let them do whatever it was they want to do. But something got screwed up, something got fucked up while they were in the process of succeeding, and because they literally rolled a failure, you can make it like a total Pyrrhic victory in that, because one of the things that I think is always kind of a really shitty thing for a GM to do is to say, okay, you succeeded. Okay, you were able to do this. Oh, but by the way, here's an unintended consequence that happened.
Right.
It's really a shitty
on
thing.
on a total
On a
success.
success.
Almost a
On
bait
a
and switch,
success.
yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't feel good. Although the flip side is, like, why I think PBTA does this so much more elegantly. I totally agree with you on the like trading points back and forth. That was like great for 14-year-old me. You know, like that was a really good system because we were meta and we were like figuring out how to play games without anyone showing us how to do it. And,
Yeah.
you know, like, but PBTA, one of the things that a lot of people misunderstand about it is that a 6- is not a miss and shouldn't be called a miss.
Yeah.
It's a like 6-, and it's at that point, it's just that the MC is going to have narrative control over what happens.
Yeah.
Right? At a 7 and 9, you have to share narrative control, and at a 10+, you got the control. You did everything you wanted to do. 7 and 9, there's a cost. On a 6-, maybe you didn't do it. Maybe you did, and it's a Pyrrhic victory. The cost is so high. But no matter what, like the thing that PBTA codifies as a rule is, like, if they rolled, something changes, right? You never roll dice and say nothing happens.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, to the point of like, if you want them to be able to get through the door, don't make them roll.
Right.
The thief is a trained thief with lockpicks, and there's no one shooting at you, and you're not underwater, and you're like, yeah, cool. You open the door, like. Great, let's move on with the story because it's about advancing the narrative, not getting stuck here in a locked room.
And that's kind of my point. I was trying to figure out, like, as you guys are saying this, I haven't thought this through yet, but like, if I were to maybe try to do something like this using D&D, let's say, I think I'd make my rules, maybe my die rolls a little squishy. Like, if you need a 15 to hit something, on a 14, you succeed, but you tell me you didn't quite succeed, something went wrong. You hit him. You tell me, and I would give the player the chance to describe to him. It deflects off his shield, and it's only half point of damage.
Yeah.
Or something. I would allow the player to have some input in the narrative as to why he succeeded, but not fully.
Well,
And because that to me still keeps everybody engaged without a bunch of rules flying around.
well, see, what I was planning on doing for the Call of Cthulhu game is if it's a situation where I want them to make the roll, because sometimes I ask for rolls when I really shouldn't. I think a lot of
Everybody does.
Yeah.
I do
But,
that.
yeah.
Sometimes, you know, to be completely honest, sometimes it's just stalling. Like I'm trying to think of what's going to happen. Why don't
Right.
you roll? Thinking. Yeah.
Everyone make a perception roll.
Yeah.
That's what, that 90% of the time.
Which
that's
is not
fine.
the best. That is not perfect GMing.
You know what I do
It is
for,
human GM.
for a perception roll? I have them roll, and I just see how much they succeed by. Because like,
Right.
Yeah.
I know you're going to notice. If you rolled a natural 20, I'm going to describe everything in the area for you. If you only got that way, it gives you degrees of what it is you notice.
Yeah,
But that's again, that's a squishy thing that I do.
I had a GM one time where it didn't have difficulties for perception checks. It was just, now I also know, like, he must have done this ridiculous prep, but like he would say, okay, at a 5 you see the door, you know, like at a 10, so it was like everybody roll, and whoever got this, like, this is the information you got, and he had all these stages of like, you got something,
Yeah.
right?
You're not going to
And-
not see anything.
Right.
You're,
Yeah.
you're standing in front of a door.
right.
There's a door. It's red.
And that happens in real life too. People like, did you see, like your kid who has perfect eyesight? Hey, did you see that cat? You're like, is that a cat? And what are you talking? I didn't know. I didn't see.
Yeah.
it.
Or it's like when my kids go running out for the ice cream truck and I haven't heard
Haven't
the
heard.
music.
Right.
Like my wife and I joke, we could be like stopped at a stoplight and a clown could go by in the like one-man band thing. What's that called? The like drum
Yeah.
and, like go by in the crosswalk, and like afterwards I could turn and say, "Wow, how often do you see that?" And she'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
And she'll admit that. Like, I'm not insulting her. This is her own admission
Yeah.
of like
What?
one-man band clown, I
Yeah.
guess.
But what I was planning on doing for the Call of Cthulhu game is if it's a situation where it makes sense for them to succeed, even, like, let's say they've got a skill of 75 and they roll an 80, right? And so they would have failed. I would just, what did you roll? You rolled an 80? Okay, yeah, you succeed. And then just in the back of my mind, just know, okay, I'm going to screw you somehow in this
I
situation.
think as long as they know that potential is there,
Yeah.
you know, like you wouldn't want to like not tell them.
Yeah.
Right.
Verk in the chat room just said, I'll never forget my players' faces when I told them their 6- succeeded in picking the lock, only to meet the head of security through the door. It's like, yeah, you can succeed at that, but there still will be a
There
complication.
is a consequence.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly. I did that one time, and it was basically the equivalent of like you open the door, everyone goes through like, cool, like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, then the door closes behind them and clicks.
Yeah,
like,
like-
oh shit.
Yeah.
You proceed. Okay, so you fiddle around with the lock. You hear a click, and you open it, and it's locked. It was unlocked to start with.
Yeah.
You locked it.
Damn it.
Now you hear footsteps.
You could do that. You could do that.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah.
All right. Is that anything else? Any other?
We solved it.
We fixed it.
Yeah.
There you go.
No.
We fixed role playing, everybody. Good job.
Woohoo!
Atomic Panda 101. I love you succeed, and that's a bad thing.
Yes.
Right.
That's a good.
That's Pyrrhic victory. That's a better definition of Pyrrhic victory
Yes.
than our fumbling.
You succeed, and it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for consolidating our entire discussion down into a one sentence.
Sorry, you succeeded.
Congratulations. I'm sorry.
All right. Face characters in D&D from Kurt. Who would like to read this?
I will do it.
Or should I haven't read? I could read. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I think he's going to be mad at you, so maybe you should read it? I don't know. Maybe
right.
I should read it, because I can pretend to be mad at you.
Pretend.
That's
All right.
never happened.
This is method acting.
Face characters in D&D from Kurt. Greetings, Jackers. Kurt from Pixel Scandal here to say that you can totally play Face in D&D. Just don't expect D&D to care.
That's a quote
accurate.
right there. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That feels right.
Yeah.
Yep.
D&D doesn't care about your feelings.
No. I'd like to come to this problem from
The
3
honey badger.
angles. But first, a disclaimer. You can play D&D any way you like, but it doesn't change what the game wants you to do. D&D mechanically is a game about killing monsters and taking their stuff.
Exactly.
Because the rules focus on that core loop, all classes will have ways to engage with that part of the game. If a true face character has to have no way of hurting monsters, probably don't play D&D.
Right.
You hurt their feelings.
Number 1, there are no face characters, or face classes. While most people will tell you Bard is a face class, I'll argue that rogues do it far better. In 5e D&D, there are 6 skills you'll care about as a face character. Deception, insight, intimidation, perception, performance, and persuasion. None of which rely on your attack stat. Rogues start with 6 of these skills at level 1, including the 2 from their background, so you'll get them all. On top of that, you get expertise with 2 of those skills at level 1, making you a damn fine talker right out of the gate. So, at level 1, only a single class feature, sneak attack, isn't helping you to be a face. Though, I'm sure a face had to fire a gun every now and then.
Hey,
Is he talking about face from the A-Team?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why
I
it's
think
capital
that's where
F.
the term came from.
Probably, yeah.
I don't know, face man, because it's ostensibly it's a
I think that's-
confidence
What was that
comment.
actor's name? That was the guy from
Dirk Benedict.
Dirk Benedict.
Wouldn't that be why he was called face, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was the face.
Like,
Yeah, but I don't know if the term existed before that.
You can
though.
Google it, but I think it was. I think it was an old term for like confidence man. Or if you're running a confidence game, you'd be the face man. You're the one that's interacting, and the rest of these people will be the heavies,
maybe
the
that's
man,
what
the
put it in more pop
driver.
culture.
Yeah.
All right, continuing reading. At second level, you get cunning action, which lets you dash or disengage as a bonus action. Pretty handy when they catch you fraternizing with the prince, and you need to make a hasty retreat. So far, we're basically face. Once again, capitalized as a name. At third level, you get to choose an archetype. You might think this is where it will fall apart, right? Here we go. Now I'm some kind of thief or assassin, you exclaim. Nope, I've got you covered here too. Follow me to the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, where you'll find the Mastermind archetype, which focuses explicitly on our goal of being the capitalized face. Mastermind gives you a disguise kit, lets you mimic others' speech, and even helps your buddies fight from a safe distance.
So if I can jump in real quick, that reinforces his point that D&D doesn't care about your face. Right?
Right, yeah.
We had to go to another book
Yes.
and dig like this one little nugget out to take to like make this work.
Yeah.
It's a supplement. It's
Yeah.
fluff. They've always done that.
By third level, we've reached maximum face. All without having to put a single point in a combat stat or learn a spell. Not that face wouldn't have used magic if it had existed in the A-Team universe, but that's beside the point. Number 2. I can't talk my way out of fights. Talking your way out of fights has more to do with DM preference than class. While the game does tell you all the ways monsters fight, it often doesn't say how they react to flattery. So, if your third level mastermind can't talk his way past a few bandits, that's a problem with the DM, not the class.
Hey there, handsome. Anybody ever tell you want to talk about sheer muscle? That's my
Yeah, that's good.
Gene Wilder.
Nice,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you for that. Of course, if you ever try to like talk a flesh golem out of bopping you on the head, it's probably not going to work. Anyway.
Let's assume you have a DM who is willing to play along and let you bypass their bandits with clever trickery. Make a deception check, they say. Your mastermind is pretty good at this, but skills in 5e are fairly ambiguous, meaning a lot can ride on a single d20 roll, often with no way to mitigate failure. This leads to my next point. Part number 3. D&D doesn't care about your face character. D&D may have social skills, but the bulk of the rules will always be about fighting things and taking their stuff. The game isn't going to give you interesting ways to talk your way out of a fight or mitigate the failure of a deception check. There's no social armor to act as a buffer if you roll 1 with that disguise kit. You aren't going to lose a few social hit points if you have a bad persuasion check. The game will never care about your razor wit as much as it cares about your skill with an actual razor.
That's another great quote.
That's very good.
Yeah.
It's not a failing of class systems. It's a failing of D&D.
Yep.
In closing, the class systems may suck for their lack of customization, but they aren't the reason it's hard to be a face in D&D. Thanks, and until next time, drink. Kurt from Pixel Scandal.
Cheers.
He's right on so many things. I mean, but I always think of a bard as sort of a hybrid of the. Maybe it's something I haven't
You just
played
like bards.
5e for a long time. I do, but bards were also had a lot of thiefy powers as well for a long time.
In the earlier versions, yeah.
And I think
originally, in first edition D&D, you couldn't be a bard out of the gate.
No, it was a big.
That's something you had
multi-class thing.
You had to
get into,
be
yeah.
2 levels certain levels of a couple other things to even take bard stuff.
But in the recent iterations, it's they had some sort of thiefy stuff going on. But I still think you're right. What he's doing here is making a con man. Mm-hmm. You know, you become Harold Hull. You become somebody who comes in, charms the ladies out of the widows out of their money, and leaves town.
Which is just another flavor of a rogue.
It's exactly.
I would argue though, like he's saying, it's not a failure of class; it's a failing of D&D. Like I don't think it's a failing. Like I think D&D is designed that way and wants to be that way. Like
Yeah.
I think like we can call it a failing in what we might want to do specifically if you want to make a face character, but something that is designed a certain way and works impeccably for what it's designed to do, I don't know if it's fair to call it a failing.
Yeah, it's designed around combat, and to say it's good at that and not social stuff is like, well, they never really claimed to be the social battle game, and they've like tried to shoehorn some stuff in there for folks who want to have that be part of it, but.
Okay, stop talking to my experience points.
Exactly.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to as well. Yeah, I mean, unless everybody's on board with you being a face man, or they're all flavors of a face man too, what's going to happen is every time you try to get up and talk to somebody and they fail and they bop you on the head, the fighters are going to have to come and rescue you. And or if they come in and kill something before you have a chance to talk to it, it's just going to cause strife.
Right.
It's 2 different ways of playing a game, and I don't know if they blend well.
I think you can play that if you're really clear with communication at the table. Like we've had episodes where we've talked about playing a pacifist in D&D, and that's a character choice that you have to make and lean into, and you have to be very specific about your choices when you're making that character, and you have to clearly communicate to the DM and the people at the table that that's what you're going for. If you're like, hey, I'm making this face character, if I fail something, I'm going to get punched in the face, and you guys are going to need to help me.
Yeah,
Like
if
that-
everyone knows that going into it.
Right.
Yeah.
My sorcerer that I played in 4E was a charismatic sorcerer, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
again, charisma's that's their stat that they use.
Yeah, that's their combat stat.
And he was ostensibly a face man. He was always very charming, and very egotistical, and he was always going up and wouldn't it be? And he was always trying to talk to people, pissed off much of the other party because I screwed things up more than I helped, and I was hogging the limelight a lot because that's what a face man does. Is he suddenly comes in and starts talking and seizing the moment. Well, it's like we could just kill it and move on.
Yeah. I think part of that was 4E.
Well, yes.
So it was like combats were already so long.
Right.
Yeah.
Like those, I think like sometimes those character choices are super great. Like in some systems you can lean into those character choices. Sometimes you make those character choices and then suddenly what was going to be a 3-hour combat already becomes a 6-hour
I
combat.
mean, a lot of people.
Yeah.
do.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like in the first couple minutes of that combat, it's fine.
And we were at a higher level too.
Right. So it's like adds on that time, and that I would say is a little bit of a failing of a system. If you want to play a 6-hour combat, then D4E was the system for you.
Yes. Yes.
Video
But-
game, the TTRPG.
Yeah. Right.
I think it was Tappy that summed it up really succinctly. So it's a great little miniature game with some
role-playing
Role-playing,
rules.
yeah. So I would say that was also just like feedback from our already frustration with that particular system. But But yeah, I think it can be done. It takes like that communication, and I don't know. I don't know if I've played like someone with a more. I guess we've had more face type characters. Like Bruce played like a rogue who was a face character in your Eldony game.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he was also like he was a face character, but he also leaned into the rogue stealing stuff thing, which we weren't
Heavily.
supposed to know.
But the problem with D&D is, like, particularly in this, because, like he says, there's no way to mitigate this. In combat, there are lots of ways to mitigate. But, like, in the Waterdeep campaign that we just ran, a couple of times, my paladin, who had, like, +3 charisma, like a little bit, right? Wasn't trained in, I think I had persuasion but not deception or whatever. And half the time, like, the rogue and the bard, who were, like, excellent liars and supposed to get in, like, flubbed a couple rolls, and then I rolled an 18, right? Like, just total swing of the D20,
Right.
and suddenly the narrative turned into my character being this, like, talker and, like, wanting to get out of trouble instead of fighting, and I'm the paladin.
And paladins have honest faces.
Right.
Yeah, but I could see a paladin. I guess I don't know.
Right,
I've
but it
really
wasn't-
started on paladins. I have a whole different take on
wasn't-
paladins than most people do.
Sure, it just wasn't. It wasn't my intention. It was like, oh, this is a bad spot to get in a fight. I'll try and roll too. And the people who had twice as many points as me rolled 2 and 4, and I rolled an 18. That's a D20, baby.
Right.
So I have a question though. So with like face characters and social, like combat type situations, like Vampire has a whole bunch of mechanics and stuff for that. But still, adjudicating that is still completely dependent on the GM.
That's true.
So I don't know, like, it may have very specific things to do for rolling dice, but when it comes down to it, even PBTA, the person running it, facilitating, still says what happens on, when they get that hard move. I'm not supposed to call it a miss now. Or that partial success.
It's a 6-.
Yeah, 6-, 6-. So, how is that superior then?
Well, it's not entirely. Like, his point also stands that you have to have a good GM to have social aspects in any game. Because, ultimately, even on a 10+ in PBTA, it's up to the GM to decide, okay, yeah, you convinced me. What does the NPC do with your convincing argument? That can have a lot of factors in it. I mean, there are also things, like, I think a GM should be upfront about, like, look, this guy is running at you, sword at the ready, and it does, like, don't make a swaying argument right now. Like, this is not, like, he's not going to listen to your reasonable explanation.
Right.
You have to fight a swordsman right now.
Yeah.
But you could. I'm thinking like in Hero, you have what they call a presence attack, which is you could literally like stop and
Yeah.
Oh,
But,
that exists in Vampire too.
An intimidation roll.
right, and
Sure.
it's a kind of face move that you would use that isn't necessarily flattery.
Sure.
But you can charismatically attack someone and intimidate them. You can affect them with your aura and your awe, which is maybe what your paladin would do.
If you have some sort of like supernatural ability to set someone's mind.
But even so, I mean, if you've ever run into people that are just got that charisma, that it factor, and you just can't take your eyes off them, and they're not magical.
I didn't
but
know
they've
anybody
got
like
something
that.
like that. Okay.
Oh, stop.
He's sitting right there.
Yeah.
My point is that there are lots of ways that somebody can be charismatic rather than just being flattery and charming. You know what I mean? And maybe it's up to the GM and the players to come up with different ways that your face man has. It can be effectual without actually.
Yeah.
Hey, handsome.
I think this kind of dials in on why we feel more pressure when we're GMing a game, because we've got these situations where we have to participate but also adjudicate. So no matter what system you're playing in, even if it's a system that's really about the feels, like, you've still got these big choices where you have to make and kind of narrate what happens, because I can't think of a system that, like, unless you're using like a randomized table of what happens, like that fills in that thinking on your feet gap.
Didn't New World of Darkness kind of try to come up with a more of a social combat system? I don't remember it being in Old World. Maybe it was, and we didn't use it, but I seem to remember, I think maybe it was New World.
New World is the only WoD I've played, and I don't remember anything like that.
I could certainly see with the Fae, you would need something like that with glamours, and you would need that has to be baked into that system if you're going to be doing something. That,
I mean, there's
that
contested
involves
roles,
charms and-
there's successes, but
Yeah.
again, the success doesn't say exactly what happened.
That's true.
So it's the GM who, again, is, or with the help of the players, creating that situation. So
Yeah, I'd farm that out. It's like, you tell me what you did to make them stop.
And the other side of this is I've been at tables where somebody rolled a total success, and the GM is like, "Yeah, they're not convinced." Like,
That's
why
lame.
did
Yeah.
I roll?
Why did I roll?
Right.
Yeah. And so that's the other side of like needing a DM that you can trust to
Right.
do something like this.
That's maybe a different conversation, right
Yeah,
there.
I mean, there's ways around. I mean, I don't know. My philosophy on social skills is that things like persuasion and stuff like that only go so far.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because if you aren't going to be able to persuade someone to do something that is, unless there's some sort of love relationship or
Mind control.
something.
Yeah,
No,
supernatural
apart from
ability.
supernatural
okay.
stuff, but like
Blackmail.
unless or it's got to be some kind of leverage.
Yeah.
It's got to be. You need to let us into this secure facility.
Yeah.
No, we know where your children are, and one of our people is over there with them right now.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm letting you in.
Yes.
But that's totally. I mean, and that's kind of really. I mean, what a lot of that I think really comes down to is, and I think face characters are more interesting if they're like, no, we're going to have to. I think face characters should be the most ruthless of the party for that kind of situation. It's like, okay, yeah, he's just going to cut your head off. I'm going after your family. So you need to kind of help us out here, or we're going to blackmail you and get you fired, or we already have we found out what you do on weekends, or things like that that kind of twist the screws. And I really think that's kind of where I don't know.
So a rogue is
That's-
perfect for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Being a con man you're in for the long con. You're in because it's nothing. You can't just
Right.
get in and get out. I mean, look at like say something like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, where they set up these elaborate plots to rob widows of their money, right? And that's kind of what you need to do. You can't just say, "Hey, give me all your money. I'm charming." Oh, okay, here you go.
Right.
You have to play it. It's like fishing. It's a long. You gotta takes a long time to land that fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that also puts so much weight on the players to come
Yes.
up with these elaborate schemes.
Yes.
And
Right.
it's a lot of back and forth with that where like,
Whereas meanwhile, the fighter just rolls and hits.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I looked up faceman. The only dictionary definition of faceman I can find is a worker, as in a quarry or coal mine, who actually works the face, as distinguished from one who serves in various supplementary capacities, as in mucking, loading, and hauling.
Oh.
Did you try Urban Dictionary?
Urban Dictionary,
It's probably bad. It's
Yeah,
probably
you don't-
gross. Don't look
Really?
Templeton Peck. You know who Templeton Peck is?
No.
Kirk Benedict's character from
okay.
A-Team.
Dirk.
Dirk. Kirk, not Kirk. Dirk.
I like it.
It could have been much worse on Urban Dictionary.
Templeton Peck.
Yeah, I don't even want to go there.
Faceman.
Yeah. All right, great email, Kurtz. Good discussion, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kurt.
And thank you for knowing D&D that well. So now we can all sound like we know what we're talking about.
Next.
Right there. You know what? At Wikipedia, we get Templeton Peck. That's the first thing up.
You want this one?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Actual play impact on TTRPGs.
Tabletop RPGs.
I know, from Ryan. Hiya there, peeps. Actual play shows like Critical Role, etc. have brought in a lot of people to the hobby.
And Happy Jack's RPG.
Yeah. How about that one?
Dungeon Master, my current group included. But I'm curious if you think that these shows can give a false outlook as to what the hobby is.
I'm so excited about this topic.
My current Dungeon Master is great, and she cares a lot about making the game revolve around our characters, and she can get very frustrated when we start to delve into the more goofy side of role playing. that never happens here.
Don't know what you're talking about. No.
I'm unfamiliar with that.
Oh, it's only one more page. I feel that the shows like these can train people to think that the core goal of role-playing is to tell a fantastic story. I'm not saying that is unimportant, but personally, I think that the core goal should always be having a fun time. This
Hear,
might
hear.
just be for our role-playing backgrounds clashing, though. I got into the hobby from me and some friends half-assing the 3E D&D rules from half a player's handbook that we inherited.
Now, to be clear, that is the only amount of assing that's possible in 3E. So,
Especially when you only have half a player's handbook.
right, like they're lucky they were not just quarter assing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah, there's whole chunks there that are missing. So I actually kind of I laud that. So
Can I just say, your first role-playing game, you're going to half-ass the rules.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Your 200th role-playing game, it's probably your half-assing.
Maybe.
but now it's on purpose.
Well, because here's what
Yes.
happens. Here's what happens: that you read the thing, you've been playing, it's working fine. You maybe iron out a couple, but you still haven't gone back and reread the books and corrected yourself because
And then you go sit down with
you
new
didn't think you were
people.
doing anything wrong.
As I've said before, GURPS have the best advice for learning a role-playing game.
Do it.
Keep the core book in the bathroom.
There you go.
A page a trip.
There you go.
That was Steve. That's a direct quote from Steve Jackson.
Wasn't that in
A page a
Seinfeld where
trip.
they couldn't return the book because it was in the bathroom?
You follow that advice to this day.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start this whole sentence again. This might just be our role-playing backgrounds clashing, though. I got into the hobby from me and some friends, half-assing the 3E D&D rules from half a player's handbook that we inherited. I've seen some Reddit threads and articles over this year and past year, and I'm curious about your thoughts. I'll also be running inspectors. That's inspectors like as in ghosts.
Inspectories.
That's a really cool name, by
That
the way.
is very cool.
It's a fun
Inspectors
game.
At a conference coming up in Austin. If
Is
you
that
guys-
Fady? Is that a Fadish game?
I think it's
Fate
PBTA.
system.
Is
Yeah.
it? Okay.
If you guys have any advice on the game, shout out to Chupacabra. Thanks,
Woohoo.
douchebags. Keep jacking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts.
I,
It's
Go
like
No, you go first.
Okay, well, I think this comes back to having that pre-game conversation with your table.
Yeah.
And setting expectations for tone and setting and, is this... Like, I had an extremely frustrating... I think I've mentioned this, like running Shadowrun in college. Here I am, good at running Shadowrun now, and my players take their badass professional criminal characters to fucking Dunkin' Donuts and sit there for an hour and a half of our 4-hour game time and like shoot the shit at Dunkin' Donuts, not making a plan for the job. It's just like, yeah, now I'm gonna get the donut with sprinkles on it. I'm like, okay, cool.
They were character development. They were working
Right,
connections.
but I didn't know that's the kind of game they wanted. I wanted to blow shit up.
that's like Pulp Fiction.
Right, but
It's like having a conversation about we're gonna have this big long philosophical conversation in the diner rather than
right, and that would be fine if everyone ahead of time had signed up for the same thing. Because I could tell, like, at least one other person at the table was like, "Oh man, is this really what we're doing right now?" So like, I think this is all about prepping that conversation because it can be all about having a fun time. It can be about goofing and making jokes and whatever. But if not everyone is on board with that, somebody at the table is miserable.
Yeah.
And likewise, if everyone is doing a serious time and the person who wants to make a goof gets dirty looks, that person's miserable. So I think it's all about expectations and pre-discussion.
Yeah. I
I have
think,
I have an analogy. Actual play games are to actual tabletop role playing games as porn is to real sex. Maybe.
I think that's a good analogy because I was about to say there are different types of actual plays, and I think
Yes.
lumping them all together because I spend a lot of my time looking at actual plays, not just ours but other people's. You've got in porn, you've got your high professional porn with editing and lighting and makeup and After Effects and all these things and planned out scripts. Then you've got your amateur porn in your living room with like your mom's ugly lamp behind everything, and that's the thing everyone
Oh,
starts
why does
looking
it have
at.
to be mom's lamp? That
That's
just
what
ruined the
makes it
porn.
creepy. Exactly. And you're
For some people, I don't want to kink shame.
you're on Pornhub and you're like watching it, and you suddenly are distracted by the lamp, and then you have to change videos because you can't look at anything else but the lamp
holy
anymore.
shit, that's the lamp that's in your mom's house. I can't watch
Yeah,
that.
I can't look at that
Some
anymore.
people are into lamps.
Yeah,
What
so
are you going to do? No shame there.
I think, because I have this feeling with porn too. Like porn, if you're watching the wrong type of porn, can really give the wrong impression. Like there's
Right.
a whole generation of people who are learning about sex from porn.
Right.
And a lot of them are watching this highly produced porn that isn't giving them an idea of what real sex is about. Like
And this is angle, so the camera sees everything the way it's
Yeah.
supposed to. And,
there's a whole generation of women who are doing anal sex because they feel like they have to because people have been trained that that's what you do in porn.
It's been normalized.
Yeah, and which is fine if you are really into it and enjoying it, but there's a lot of women who don't that are doing it anyway because they think it's expected.
Right.
So I know it's weaving feminism and porn, and it's very
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah.
But
Those absolutely go together, though.
yeah,
Like,
they absolutely
they
do.
have to.
It's a big issue actually in feminism right now. But like actual plays are the same way. So as long as you're like looking at them and realizing what they are, They're, the AP, there's a ton of APs that are coming out from Los Angeles. We know a ton of the people involved in some of the big shows, many of the small shows, all these things. Some of them are highly produced. Some of them are scripted. Some of them are not scripted. And as long as you're looking at
some of them are highly edited.
Some of them are highly edited. Some of them are like us and don't edit anything. And so, so as long as you're
Fuck editing.
Yeah. So as long as you're looking at it and acknowledging and seeing what it is.
Yeah.
So if you are watching a show to learn to be a GM, and you're watching a super highly, produced show,
right,
you have to realize that there are probably flubs that they're editing out. Even if it's live, there's a delay on some of these shows that they, that going out before it goes out on Twitch, things like that.
Yeah. Even like a big name like the Adventure Zone, but fortunately they don't hide the fact that they edit and they talk about it, which I like.
Yeah.
But like, you cannot fit what they just did into a 59-minute episode every other week.
Exactly.
Like, that's unreal.
Yeah, and most of these shows aren't doing it to be shady. Just like porn isn't doing it to be shady. Like, they want the best, most professional product there that's going to really click with the audience. So, like, you have to look at things with a realistic lens. If you're like, hey, I'm going to compare my GMing to this super highly produced show that's been going on for years or whatever with these professionals and lighting and, 4 writers who are helping the DM come up with their storylines every week. Like, you are setting the bar way too high for yourself.
I mean, that reminds me, what was the David Nett thing? Gold, the series.
Yeah.
Because in that was like the first time I saw where someone like was sort of depicting a fictionalized version of D&D, and the GM is like, bam, this is awesome. And you watch it, it's like, no one GMs like that.
Yeah.
No one speaks that extemporaneously. See?
Point in fact, yeah. We all have moments, and I think this is one of the things I'm like super proud about Happy Jacks is like we are real. And that's great. There are people out there who make incredible products that I consume that aren't like super like we are the amateur porn of APs, and I love it.
Well, we're
because
like
it's real.
the actual genuine amateur porn rather than the porn that is actually
We don't have the ugly
overproduced
lamb.
porn that is actually
Yeah.
This is
marketed
a really slippery slope
as
we need to be
amateur.
careful. I'm not sure I like the way this analogy is going.
But like you can watch,
tricky.
you can watch, you can watch our games and see actual loving, real sex with sort of awkward moments sometimes. But people are both there because they're enjoying it. There's not a mom's lamp in the background.
Well, maybe there is, but you're in the moment.
I'm falling down this rabbit hole. I can't get out.
I tried to stop. I know. I'll bring up another point. Here we go. In the past, the only way you could find out other ways to GM the same game or different styles was to go to cons or have another person GM and such. That was outside your circle, and the only place to meet that was cons and things. APs do serve a great purpose, judiciously, in seeing how other people solve GMing problems or even different styles or different things that you never thought of. I can't tell you how many times I've learned stuff watching from APs, and even at cons, I'm like, what a great idea.
Sorry.
Are you still stuck on the porn analogy?
I can't tell you how many times I've
Yeah.
learned something from watching.
It's like going to your neighbor's window and peeking in.
No, that is illegal. That is not the same.
Happy Jacks does not condone that activity at all.
But I think
Going to an orgy and taking notes.
Well, they used to be. Okay,
if you're invited, that's fine.
Wait,
Right.
you don't take notes?
there used to be magazines, and now there's videos. So or the Kama Sutra was like where it used to start. So that back in
Pottery.
the early days, and that's all we had. Right,
Yeah.
was the Kama Sutra. And now you're like, there's all this other sources to look at. And I can see how it can set up false expectations. And part of the problem I have, even here, is that whenever we do a game, I am very conscious that we are being watched.
Oh, yeah, so am I.
And it's a very Schrodinger's cat kind of thing, or even Heisenberg's principle kind of thing, is that I know that I'm being watched and it does affect the way I play and even some of the choices I make. I don't want it to, but it does.
Yeah.
So even APs
And
with
it
the best
should.
of intents aren't necessarily a great representation of what actually happens at the table.
I mean, it should, and let's be completely frank. If you're going to put something out for public consumption, you want to have a certain level of quality in what you're doing, right? Yeah. So there's things that you're not going to do that you might normally do in a game. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's even character choices sometimes.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. Like, you're a little more focused on maybe being entertaining. One thing I noticed recently, I was at, like, a home game, and I realized two people were having like a side conversation separate from what the GM and
you were
someone
like,
else was
you're
talking
like,
about. And I was like, oh wait, it's fine because we're in someone's house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Like,
Mom's lamp is over there.
but after 2 years of doing APs, I'm like, oh, hey, let's not, like, I realize that's a unique thing to doing a live performance that you can't, you can't have multiple people in the mic at the same time. Just that alone, when you're at a home game, you don't have everyone sitting there paying attention quietly, respectfully, following along to everything that's happening.
Yeah.
And you just won't get that. So that aspect alone won't be at your home table.
And that's sort of an advantage of not filming and miking your games is
Right.
that you can have that situation where the two rogues are like, oh, you guys are having
Yeah.
a conversation with an NPC. Okay, let's go over here and
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about how we're going to steal everyone's
Go to
shit.
the bathroom whenever you want. Or,
People are
Right.
on their phones while other
Yeah.
people are having a moment. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I'm talking about actually character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In character, between character conversations can happen in multiple instances at the same time, and you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like APs have expanded the hobby. Like, I mean, like D&D's growth like cannot be separated from the popularities of APs. And
Oh,
like it's
I think absolutely
100%.
right. Well, and Wizards of the Coast has embraced this and
Yeah.
has for a while now.
Yeah. And more publishing companies are like, we get like, we don't generally do sponsorships. If we do sponsorships, we're very clear about it. But like generally, like systems, if we were like, hey, we're doing this AP, like the systems they retweet us. They're like, hey, check this out, like giving us more boost for it.
Yeah, like the developers over at Demigods have been super generous.
I know. They're just the best, man. And Decima, they're the best. No.
Amazing.
Yeah, but so I think it's a great thing for the hobby. I think it's opened up a lot of doors, like especially marginalized groups. Like there are so many more women specifically that I've heard from coming into the hobby because they've seen other women, specifically on our channel. I get like DMs and stuff from women all the time saying, "Hey, I decided to try this out because I saw your table. Then there's like half women or a big chunk of women there. So they're seeing like themselves represented.
Right.
Same thing for people of color, people LGBTQIA+, like all these marginalized communities are also starting to actually see representations of themselves like playing these games.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also something that's starting to make the hobby grow more than just the publicity, but the actual looking at a screen or hearing an AP and knowing, oh, that's a person that's had a similar life experience to me. Maybe I can do this.
Right.
I think is huge.
Or we would be welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I mean, in the Stone Age that Stork and I talk about, where there were probably 5 women at an entire game convention.
Right.
Yeah, those days are long gone.
Right.
Thankfully.
when you had to go up to a board and pull someone's number and go to their house to play.
Sure.
That's terrifying in so many ways to so many different groups of people.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah. So I don't know.
There's one other thing that APs help with, which I completely laud, whether they're well produced or not, and that's to teach you a game. If you are Fate curious, if you're a Powered by the Apocalypse curious, and you don't want to invest, or you're not sure if you want to invest, or you bought the rules and they just don't make sense,
Or you're a visual learner like me.
watch APs
100%.
and everything gets spelled out for you. And I found that to be the most useful tool for me with an AP. It's like okay, so I played a Powered by the Apocalypse. I've read the rule book. I'm not grokking it. You watch an AP or two, and you're like, oh, that's how that rule applies. Oh, that's
yeah.
how that works.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's also nice you can absorb 8 hours of information
Yes.
without any personal stress
Right.
of like, oh, I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to make a mistake. Like, yeah, don't worry. Just absorb other people making mistakes, and it's great.
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, if we read the rules for a game and we couldn't figure out how to play it, you'd have to find someone who was playing it and hope you could get invited to their game.
Play it wrong for
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I think like looking at our numbers for our shows, like I know not everyone loves listening to the 0-0 episodes where we do character creation for all the APs, and I know like some of our like long-term
Those
fans,
numbers are almost always high, though.
well, yeah, no, like some of our like people who are more interested in the story, like are people who listen to a lot of our campaigns sometimes skip that episode, but those are always 100% the episodes that have the most views and downloads because
Yeah.
people are looking at how to make characters for
Yeah.
the games they're running, even if they aren't necessarily actual play people who are interested in like enjoying the full campaign, they get the educational value out of those specific episodes.
Oh yeah, it's like the Traveler character gen session. It was huge.
And
Some of them have tens of thousands of downloads because people just want to figure out how to do characters.
Right.
And in those cases, whether the AP is slickly produced or not, it does teach you how. Maybe if it's too slick, I don't know. Critical Role, maybe early on, like when early on in a session, you can learn how to play a game and such. But after that, it gets so caught up in the storytelling, you forget. It's like they haven't used a rule in 2 episodes. They haven't. So
Yeah.
I think in many ways APs are really useful in that.
Yeah,
I
100%.
kind of got derailed about whatever. I actually had another point and it fell out of my head in the speech.
Don't
So.
you
Well, that was a really
Yes.
good
Don't you
point.
hate being old?
Yes.
Fuck it,
Yes,
man.
I do.
Fuck age.
Yeah.
Are they impacting the hobby? Absolutely. There's positive and negative with that. I don't know if it's better that people are coming in, like who are coming into the hobby because of it or not. Like,
Oh,
there's
it's
just
better.
different
I think it's
experiences.
better. The fact
No,
that you
no,
have
but-
more
More is
people
better,
and a more diverse
more
pool
people
of
and
people
diverse.
coming in is fantastic.
But I can't tell whether, like, if you is someone who came into the hobby before it better off than someone who's coming into it recently. I wouldn't say that. They have different experiences.
And I think any preconceived notions you have by watching the sort of idealized, like high-end porn coming into the role-playing game
Yes.
is going to be quickly disabused once you sit down at a table with actual people,
Well, but-
actual amateurs, and play the game.
But that's the thing that's missing is the conversation that this
Yeah.
what's his name, Ryan's
Ryan.
GM. That's a conversation they need to have.
Absolutely.
It's not like, why aren't you being serious? It's, oh, you don't want to be serious.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or to the GM, like, oh, you were wanting to focus more, so, okay, so maybe we can minimize our goofs a little bit, and, you know, sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, you didn't. You actually, and that's a good point. I just remember what I was going to say now, which was ostensibly that it's kind of a tick in the conversation. Maybe we can talk about it later, but I've been astonished at how popular role-playing games have gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because of APs. D&D is selling gangbusters, and it's not because Wizards of the West Coast is doing a great job marketing. I don't think they've done anything better or worse than they have in the past. I can trace it back maybe 15 to 20 years with the drop of Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was an unbelievably popular movie set, and it wasn't just nerds going to it.
Oh no, it couldn't have
Because
been. It wouldn't
would
have
not
made us that much money.
Exactly.
Right.
So somewhere along the line,
Nerd culture became culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
and people became much more curious in it than they have been in the past, and it's been a snowball from there. And I think APs are a reflection of that. And so people buy this thing they heard about D&D. It's like, oh yeah, I used to throw kids in the locker because of D&D. Now, this seems interesting. And now because of modern technology, APs are all part of the tool set that people have to learn and play games.
Look at our band. Look what happened. Look how outside the sports people
Yeah.
in our band
Yeah.
feel when all of the rest of us start talking about some role-playing game thing
Right.
or some nerd
Yeah.
culture thing, and they're like, "Oh, they're talking about that again."
Yeah.
Or like, look at HBO, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
They're trying
Yeah.
to figure out, like, are we going to lose a bunch of subscribers next week? Like, in 2 weeks?
Oh,
like,
I'm sure they're going to do
right?
spin-offs.
But there you have the perfect example of, like, D&D meeting porn.
Right? Yeah.
Well, but again, that's another reflection. It's like
Especially the early episodes.
Yeah.
When I
Because
was-
HBO always has a lot of flesh.
When I was a
in early
15 or
episodes.
16-year-old kid back in the day, a show like that never would have existed. And if it did, it would have been cheap as hell. It would have had
Yeah.
Sword and the Sorcerer with a play.
yeah.
You know,
We
it's
had like
awful.
Lady Hawk.
Or just
Which is
awful.
Lady
perfect.
Hawk
How
was the
dare you?
best!
Or Troll.
Prettiest
Or
horse.
Crow.
The prettiest horses in any movie ever.
Sure.
Lady Hawk. The best.
But-
beautiful Frisian, beautiful. Sorry, I'm done.
But there never would have been a series that was that popular. I mean, Game of Thrones is embraced across all spectrums. Everybody loves it, whether you're a computer scientist or whether you are a I don't know.
Right.
Pick a random
Oh, and
archetype.
everyone's talking about Game of Thrones.
Everyone.
We tell a Game of Thrones joke on stage. The wives are going to have a Game of Thrones themed shirt this weekend. The whole audience gets it.
yeah.
20,
And
30 years ago, you would have been pushed in a locker for that or ostracized
Right, exactly.
for bringing up
Even
a
at
fantasy
Ren Fair.
novels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even at Ren Fair.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the people that work Ren Fair are those nerds.
Right.
But the people who go to it aren't.
And now everybody
And now
is.
they are.
That's an interesting thing that's happening, and I think role-playing games are benefiting because of that.
Absolutely.
Although,
100%.
go ahead.
No, you do your thing first.
Well, this is a slight tangent.
Okay, well, I was going to go back to Jason's point for just 1 second. You were talking about how important those conversations are. I think that is one thing that is missing from a lot of APs, are those conversations about tone
Yes.
and safety tools and things like that. And I think, like, a lot of us at Happy Jacks are we make sure that's the 0-0. A lot of times we have those conversations like, this is going to be a dark game, or this is going to be a lighthearted game, or this game's going to get weird. And I think a lot of shows are missing that. So I think a lot of people who are watching APs as an educational tool are not getting that added to their GM tool bag. So I think that's something that people need to keep in mind too. And hopefully they're out there finding those resources or seeing some APs that do kind of do those important, not so entertaining, but vital steps in running a good RPG.
Yeah. Sometimes you can't help it. I have some horror stories about people in games sabotaging games because they didn't want to be there, or they just want to wrench throw and just F with everybody.
They had a bad day, and
or they just want to be douches because they just want to be the center of attention. And there's not much you can do about that.
Yeah.
But
Cameras hopefully help prevent that a little bit at least. Sorry, what was your
We are douchebags. This is a huge tangent. I re-listened to Ready Player One, the Will Wheaton reading, and I was stunned by how well written that is. Especially each of the when they're going through and trying to solve each of the puzzles, the anticipation he builds as it comes up, and just every one of them is just freaking fantastic. And then I watched the movie again, and it just pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because it's like first challenge, just fell out of my head.
I don't know. I haven't read the books or seen the movie, so
race?
I don't want to spoil.
No, in the book.
Yeah.
Come on. The D&D module, the impossible D&D module.
Yeah. We'll all think of it once the cameras are off.
Tomb of Horrors.
With Acererak.
Tomb of Horrors or the
Tomb of Horrors.
Tomb of Horrors, yeah.
Tomb of Horrors. And then for the second key...
That's Horrors, by the way, based on our previous conversation.
Right.
Yes.
Not Horrors. Tomb of Horrors is a different game.
The
Speaking of
chatroom
porn.
is yelling at us.
And then the second key is a real life walkthrough of Zork, and it's all of this really cool nerd culture
Zork.
stuff
Yeah.
that existed in the 1980s that I remember from my childhood. And then I watched Steven Spielberg, and it's like, no, I made this for the USC Film School crowd.
Yeah.
It's all movie references, the whole frickin' thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here there's a little D&D thing. There's a picture on the side of a van
there's a video
for
game
all of
going
you
by.
nerds.
Oh, don't.
Well, and it's visually more exciting to bring the Iron Giant in than it is to try to figure out what a Gru looks like. Although I guess you could use Gru from the movies, right? With his minions. Isn't that in Zork? You are about to be eaten by a Gru.
Yeah,
but
don't go in the
what
dark.
Gru are you talking about?
Yeah, Gru.
The Gru with the minions. Isn't he Gru? Isn't that the name of the...
No,
of
wasn't it Gru the Wanderer?
and there was Gru the Wanderer, GRO.
I don't know what that is.
But wasn't Groove with the minions and not Despicable? Yeah, Despicable Me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Isn't he
I
named
haven't
Gru?
seen it.
GRU?
No, no.
Yeah.
I don't
Only
remember.
me. I'm the
You've
only one
got
with
kids.
kids.
Well, Stu does, but he doesn't watch it.
I don't watch that shit. My daughter's big into anime.
Yeah, I know.
Huge
It's
into
great.
anime.
Yep, mine is
Oh my god, I shocked a kid. He went running down the hall today with like the anime run with like his arms out back behind him. And I was like, insert student name here. This is not an anime. We do not run in the halls. And he stares at me. He's like, you know anime? Yes, I am the cool
Now, my
teacher.
daughter
Get back in
suggested
line.
I watch something called Sword Art Online.
Sure. Yeah. It was pretty good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Season 1 was good. Season 2, it kind of petered out for me.
I have a lot of stuff.
But
that
have
way
you seen
now.
Cowboy Bebop?
No.
Okay,
That's vital.
start there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Oh, really? Okay.
that's a space western that I think you would genuinely
So
enjoy.
good.
Oh, okay.
It's one
It's
of
like-
the first animes, though, too. I mean, it's almost so old that it doesn't even look like modern animes.
Yeah, but you
anymore.
can
It's
get
one
the
of the
whole
first
thing on
animes-
Hulu
yeah.
now. Like, it's...
Right.
It's
I've
one of the
got-
first animes that made it into the U.S. and like really like. People
Well, I remember
understood
the old when it was called Japanimation.
Sure. Yeah,
Which
we don't
is
say that
the
anymore.
1970s.
Yeah.
Speed Racer, Kimbo the White Lion,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And then that was my favorite moment when reading that book, Ready Player One, when they start talking about Johnny Rocket and his giant robot, because I remember that show, and I watched every freaking episode of that show on channel fucking 22 or whatever it was.
With the 18.
No, the 18 was later.
Yeah.
This is in the 70s, and
That
it's
was my bringing it back around so we can.
okay. All right, face characters.
Face characters. Thank you.
We did it.
Benedict,
Did it. Seamless.
Dirk Benedict, Benedict Cumberpatch. What is it?
All right, I lied. This is the ugly lamp in the background. Right here. This is what it is. Like, we have it sometimes. I'm sorry.
Somewhere there's a great picture.
Stay focused on the good.
Somewhere there's a great picture of Dirk Benedict and Katie Sackhoff sitting in a Starbucks, and it says Starbuck and Starbuck having a Starbucks at Starbucks.
Yes, I love that one.
Amazing.
Oh, man.
Now you can do it.
Now we can go.
She was a better Starbuck.
Yeah.
Totally.
100%.
Much better series.
Oh yeah,
100%.
that show was great.
Have you seen the Game of Thrones intro that, as if it had come out in the 80s?
No.
They took the Game of Thrones music and they put like the sort of synth drums behind it, and they found shots of every character smiling and laughing, including Cersei.
Oh, putting their name under it.
Yes, putting the name so and so and featuring Hodor or what's his name as Hodor.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to
Too
go
many
find that.
cooks.
It's hysterical. All right. Thank you for joining us for season 24, episode 9 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Kimmy.
Stark.
I'm Jason.
And by the way, if you want to come out to the Renaissance Pleasure Fair, we've got 2 more weekends. 2 weekends.
I thought it was 3.
2. It's only 2. So come out and see us. And that's it. Thank you very much. We'll leave you with a song.
Yep. And we're running games and streaming from GameX on Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend.
Be aware for that if you're going.
Yep.
You can still sign up for our games. I don't know if there's spaces left.
Or watch live from wherever you are.
Yes.
Excellent.
And drink with us.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hero Pathfinder, fatal savage wilds. Evil plots will be usurping. Though we could do with less burping. Happy Jack's podcast will be douchebags all. Come, Sirrah Jack-Ho, fill some tobacco, bring a wide and some fire. Haste, haste, haste away, quick, I say, soon to the station, delay, for a drink none good today. Come, Sirrah Jack-Ho, fill some tobacco, bring a wide and some fire. Haste, haste, haste away, quick, I say, soon to the station, delay, for a drink none good today. I swear that this tobacco, 'tis purchased Trinidado, by the very, very mass, never was, but the key that is here by the rank, for the blunt is very, very good, 'tis very good. I swear that this tobacco, 'tis perfect Trinidado, by the very, very mass, never was, but the key that is here by the rank, for the blunt is very, very good, 'tis very good. Fill the pipe once more, my presents trench more, it is heady, I am giddy, my head rings back, rings joints, and veins from pains, it will purge and make clean. Fill the pipe once more, my presents trench more, it is heady, I am giddy, my head rings back, rings joints, and veins from pains, it will purge and make clean. Then those that do condemn it, or such as not commend it, never was so much to learn it is back with every soul, let them go like a crow, and not know as I do the sweet of Trinidado. Then those that do condemn it, or such as not commend it, never was so much to learn it is back with every soul, let them go like a crow, and not know as I do the sweet of Trinidado.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.
Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?